Okay, in the first lesson of Unit 1-2, we are going to look at simplifying polynomials. So we will look at adding and subtracting polynomials, and we will look at multiplying polynomials. So what is a polynomial? A polynomial is a expression that contains one or more terms, where a term is a mathematical expression using numbers and letters. So there's a number component. So here in this example, 5 would be the number component, so we call that the numerical coefficient. And then we have a variable component, which are the letters. So when I look at the term 5xy squared, what does that mean? Well, if I expanded it, it would be 5 times x times y times y. So it's a group of numbers and letters put together in terms of multiplication. So the terms are multiplied together. And if we have one term, we call that a monomial, because mono means one. If we have two terms, we call that a binomial, because binomial means two. And if we have three terms, we call that a trinomial, because tri means three. So if we have more than three terms, we generally just refer to it as a polynomial. So poly means many, and that refers to all polynomials, so all terms, whether it's a monomial, a binomial, a trinomial, or more than three, we just refer to that group as polynomials. And we generally write it in descending order, which means the highest power first. We don't have to, but you'll often see that. So if I had a polynomial expression, I might see the power 2 first, and then the power 1 next, and then the constant, which doesn't have a variable, last. So let's look at adding and subtracting like terms. So like terms means that the variables have to be exactly the same. So same variables, same power. So in this question, there are brackets. We are adding, so notice the plus sign. Don't confuse this with multiplication. If you see a plus in between the brackets, we are adding. Do we need the brackets? Probably not, because we're adding, so the signs aren't going to change. So the first thing I might do is remove the brackets, because I don't really need them. Oop, that's a minus. So 2x squared, I'm going to remove these brackets, and then I'm going to add all the terms in the second bracket. So again, the signs aren't going to change if I'm adding, so I'm just going to remove those brackets. Then I'm looking for like terms, so they have to have exact same variables. So I'll start with the first term, which is x to the power 2, and I'm looking for other terms that might have an x to the power 2. I find one there. And I'm going to add the coefficients. So 2 plus 5 is 7. And the variables do not change. We are just collecting like terms. So it's kind of like adding 2 apples, and then I have 5 apples. I have 7 apples. Those apples do not change. They are just the items that I am collecting. Then I'm going to find the next term, which is an x, and I'm going to look for other terms that have the variable x. There's one there. And I'm going to add the coefficients. So negative 5 plus negative 8 is negative 13. You can use your calculator for the integer part if you want. And then the last term is a constant because it doesn't have a variable. So I have plus 7 minus 1, which is plus 6. In the next example, we'll do the same thing. We'll remove the brackets. We don't need them because we are adding. So I see the plus here. So we are adding all the terms in the second bracket. So again, the signs are not going to change. So we'll just remove the bracket, and then we'll look for like terms. So x to the power 3, I don't see any other x to the power 3s. So that term is by itself. Oh, let's stick with the same color. Okay, so there is only one term that has x to the power 3. Oh, sorry, that is not correct. I see another one there. I see another one here. Okay, so negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. Those are my x to the power 3's. Next term is an x. I see another term there that contains an x. So plus 4 minus 7. And then finally the constant, I see a 7 and a 1 that I'm going to add together to make 8. Okay, in this example, you'll notice that we are now subtracting. So that's going to make a difference because subtraction means to add the opposite. So what it wants us to do is take the opposite sign, or the opposite of all those terms in that bracket. So the first bracket, we don't need that bracket. There is nothing in front of that bracket, so all the terms in the bracket are going to stay the same. In the second bracket, we want to remove the brackets, and we want to take the opposite of all those terms. So 5x squared is positive, so I'm going to take the opposite, so now it's negative. Negative 8x becomes positive 8x, and positive 2 becomes negative 2. So it's kind of like, well, it is like multiplying by negative 1, right? I'm taking the opposite of all those terms. Once I've done that, I'm going to look for like terms. Oops, that's not what I want. So like terms, I see x squared here, x squared here. So negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8x squared. There is an x here and an x here. So 1 plus 8 is 9. There is a 1 in front of this x that we don't usually write. And then plus 7 minus 2 is plus 5. Okay, moving on to multiplying polynomials. To multiply, we use the distributive property, which means that each term in the first bracket, or any term in front of a bracket, would be multiplied by each term in the second bracket. The instructions are usually expand and then simplify. Expand means multiply or make bigger. And simplify means then to simplify it by collecting like terms. So when we see expand, it is assumed that we will always collect like terms even if it doesn't tell us to. Okay, so expand means multiply, simplify means collect like terms. So I probably didn't need this over here. Okay, so here we have a bracket and we have a 2x in front of that bracket. So because there is no sign between 2x and the bracket, in terms of, it doesn't say, I don't see a plus and I don't see a minus, so that means it is multiplying. So we want to multiply the 2x by each term in that bracket. So when we multiply, we want to check the number part, the numerical coefficient. We want to check the sign, and then we want to check the variables. Those are the three things that we want to make sure are correct. So I have a positive 2 times a negative 5, and that would be a negative 10. So a positive times a negative is a negative. And then I have x times x, which means I have 2 x's. Then I move on to the next term. I know I'm on the next term because there's a plus sign. So I do positive 2 times positive 3 is 6, and then I have 1x. This next step would be to collect like terms, but in this case I don't have any because x squared and x are not the same. They are not like terms, so then we are done. It is not equal to anything. It is an expression, not an equation. So an equation, you would see it equal to something, but it's not, so all we can do is simplify it by collecting like terms. In this example, we have 2 terms in the first bracket, 3 in the second. So there are going to be 6 terms to multiply together. So we need to multiply the x by each term in the second bracket, and then we're going to multiply the 5 by each term in the second bracket. So there will be 6 terms to multiply together. So we have 1 times 2 is 2, and we have x times 2x's is 3x's. Then we have 1 times negative 6 is negative 6, and we have x times x would be 2x's. And then we have 1 times 1 is 1, and we have 1x. Then we're going to do negative 5. So negative 5 times positive 2 is negative 10, and we have 2x's. We have a negative times a negative is a positive 30. And we have 1x, and then we have negative 5 times positive 1 is negative 5. So remember, when signs are the same, you end up with a positive. When signs are different, you end up with a negative. So that's just a review on signs. And then we're going to look for like terms. So are there any other x to the power 3? No, I do not see any. So 2x to the power 3. X squares, I see some there. So we'll add the coefficients of negative 6 minus 10, which is negative 16 x squares. We have an x and an x there. So 1 plus 30 is 31. And then we have this number all by itself, this constant, which is negative 5. All right, so here's a few examples here. So in the first bracket, we have 3 terms multiplied by 2 terms in the second bracket. So again, we'll have 6 terms to multiply together. So we're going to have negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x, and we have 5, right? We have 3 plus 2 is 5. Then we have negative 3 times negative 3x cubed. So negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. And we have 3x's. Then we're going to go to the next term. So x. So x times x squared and x times negative 3. So that will be x times x squared is positive x to the power 3, right? We have 1 plus 2 is 3. And then we have x times negative 3 is negative 3 and an x. And then finally we've got this 7 multiplied by both terms. So negative 7 times x squared, and negative 7 times negative 3 is positive 21. And now we're going to collect like terms. So x to the power 5, all by itself, only one term. X to the power 3, I see 2. So 9 plus 1 is 10. We have an x squared here by itself. We have a 3x here by itself. And we have this 21 by itself. Oops. And there it is simplified. So we expanded by multiplying, and then we simplified by collecting like terms. Okay, in the next example, we have 3 terms in the first bracket, and we have 3 in the second. So there's going to be 9 terms to multiply, 3 times 3. So we're going to do x squared times all 3. So x squared times 2x squared is 2x to the 4th. X squared times minus 5x is minus 5x to the 3. And x squared times 3 is 3x squared. Then we've got 2x times all 3 terms. So we've got negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, and we would have x to the 3. We've got 1 plus 2 is 3. We would have negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10, x to the power 2. And then we have negative 2x times 3 is negative 6x. And then finally, we've got this 1 times all 3 terms. So we've got 1 times 2x squared, 1 times minus 5x, and 1 times 3. So that's quite a long one. Then we're going to collect like terms. So x to the power 4, there's only 1. Oh, it's not a positive. Or it's not a negative, it's positive. Okay, next term, x to the power 3. Let's see, we have 1 there. So negative 5 minus 4 is negative 9, x to the power 3. Again, you can use your calculator for the integer part. X squared, we've got 3, and 10 is 13, and 2 is 15. x's, we've got a 6x and a 5x there, so that's 11, and they're both negative. And then finally, we've got this 3. Okay, in this example here, you'll notice that the 4 is in front of the first bracket. So that 4 is going to get multiplied by all terms in this bracket. Then we have a minus. So we want to subtract the terms in the second bracket. The 4 does not belong to the second bracket because we have this separation. So if there is a plus sign or a minus sign in between brackets, then the first bracket is not multiplied by the second bracket. So what we're going to do is multiply 4 by the first bracket. So 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 2 is 8. And 4 times 7 is 28. We're going to take the opposite of the second bracket. So a becomes negative, negative b becomes positive, and plus 1 becomes minus 1. And then we're going to collect like terms. So a and a are like terms. So 20 minus 1 is 19. B and B are like terms. So 8 plus 5 is 13. And then we have minus 28 minus 1, which is minus 29. Okay, these ones are a little trickier because we have multiple sets of brackets. So when we have more than one set of brackets, we want to do the inside brackets first. So in this case, I want to do these brackets first before I do these square brackets. So I'm not going to worry about the 3 yet, or the 7. I'm going to multiply 2 by both of these brackets. Remember that once you multiply brackets, the brackets are removed and they are not there anymore because you don't want to do it twice. So I will do 2 times 8 is 16, and 2 times 6 is 12. Then I have the option of collecting like terms first before I expand the next set of brackets, or I could just expand and collect like terms at the end. It doesn't really matter which I do. I might want to tidy it up a little. Perhaps I'll add the 7 and the 12 because they are like terms. So that would give me negative 5. And then I'm going to expand these brackets. So 3 times 16 is 48d, and 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. So, or we could just do the 3 times the bracket. 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 16 is 48d, and 3 times 12 is negative 36. And then we could collect like terms. So 21 minus 36 is also negative 15. So you can expand the inside brackets, collect like terms, and then expand the outside brackets, or you can expand the inside brackets, expand the outside brackets, and then collect like terms. Either way, you're going to get the same result. Okay, the next question we have, again, more than one set of brackets. We have brackets on the outside which are square and brackets on the inside which are round. So usually you'll see that in that if you have more than one set of brackets, we just use different shapes. So usually in round ones and square ones. So I'm going to do the inside brackets first. So this is like taking the opposite of this one, or multiplying by negative 1. And then this one is multiplied by 2y. So that's, I'm going to do that both in one step. So the negative 5y we'll leave till later. We've got 8. Notice that the 8 does not belong to the bracket because you have this subtraction. So we are taking the opposite of this bracket. We are not taking 8 times this bracket. We are taking the opposite of this bracket. So minus 4y and minus 1. The second set of brackets we are multiplying by 2y. So 2y times y is 2y squared, and 2y times 3 is 6y. Again, if you want, you can simplify the bracket before we expand the outside. So I'm going to do it in descending order. So I've got 2y squared. I've got 4y and 6y. So that's plus 2y. So it's minus 4 plus 6 is 2. And then I have this 8 minus 1 is 7. So I'm going to tidy up the bracket first, and then I'll expand the outside bracket. So I have negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. I have y times y squared, so there's 3. I've got negative 5 times positive 2 is negative 10, 2 y's. And I have negative 5y times 7 is negative 35y. So by collecting like terms on the inside bracket and then expanding, I didn't really need to collect like terms at the end. Or you can expand the square brackets and then collect like terms. You'll end up with the same answer. Okay, in this example, we have, this is a hard one, this is a level 4. In the first group, we have 3 things to multiply. We have 6 times the bracket times the bracket. This square means we have this bracket twice. So I would suggest that you write it out twice so that you don't miss any terms when expanding. So I'm going to write out 4x plus 1 twice. Because sometimes when we see the square, we only square the 4 and the 1, and we forget that there's more terms to be multiplied. Okay, so if you have a number in front of 2 brackets, multiply the 2 brackets first. Leave the 6 to the end. Okay, this 6 does not belong to both brackets. We are not multiplying both brackets by 6. 6 is only multiplied once. So to avoid that temptation of doing that, I'm going to do the 2 brackets first. So 2x times 5x, 2x times negative 3, 1 times 5x, and 1 times negative 3. And then I'm going to leave this in brackets. I'm going to multiply 4x plus 1 times 4x plus 1. So 4x times 4x, 16x squared, 4x times 1, 1 times 4x, and 1 times 1. Now I'm going to get rid of these brackets. So now I will multiply the negative 6 times this bracket. Actually, before I do that, I think I'm going to collect like terms inside the bracket. So I see a negative 6 plus 5x I could add together. And in this bracket, I see a 4x and a 4x I could add together. So again, it doesn't matter if you do that now or you do it later. Now I'm going to multiply up my brackets. So negative 6 times 10. Negative 6 times negative x. So a negative and a negative is a positive, 6x. And negative 6 times negative 3 is positive 18. I'm going to take the opposite of this bracket. So 16x becomes minus 16x, plus 8x becomes minus 8x, and plus 1 becomes minus 1. Then we're going to collect like terms. So we have a minus 60 and a minus 16. So negative 72x squared. I've got a 6x minus an 8x, so 6 minus 8 is negative 2. And I've got a plus 18 minus 1 is plus 17. Okay, so that's a hard one. That's got lots of things going on in that question. Okay, one final question. So we have a square and a square, which means we have that bracket twice. So I'm going to multiply each bracket by itself. So let's write it out twice so we don't forget. Okay, again, we have a number in front of each pair of brackets. We're going to leave that to the end. We'll do that last. So x squared times, or x minus 2 times x minus 2. So x times x times minus 2 times x, minus 2 times minus 2 is positive 4. We'll leave the 2 to the end. X times x times 1, 1 times x, and 1 times 1. Then I'm going to clean up those brackets a little bit by collecting like terms. So there's some like terms there. We'll add those together. There's some like terms, so we'll add those together. This is just my preference. I like to clean up the bracket before I expand again. Keep everything nice and neat and tidy. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply the first bracket by negative 3. Negative 3 times a negative is a positive 12x. A negative times a positive is a negative 12. Next bracket is getting multiplied by -2. So this bracket gets multiplied by -3. This bracket gets multiplied by 2. So 2 times x squared, 2 times 2x, and 2 times 1. Now we're going to collect like terms. So brackets are all gone. Collect like terms. So we've got -3x squared plus 2x squared are like terms. We've got 12x plus 4x are like terms. And we have -12, 2. So that's -10. And then we are done.